talk through basic meditation seat to start. So just the fundamentals there. A lot of times in classes, we do start in a seat to just help the body ground, help the body settle. So good cues or good things to keep in mind. So if you have a block or if you have a blanket, great thing to have under the hips. So ideally we want, this is Sukhasana that we're coming into first. So ideally what we want is to have the hips higher than the knees. So if we feel, I'm just going to show you for a minute, that myself, for example, I don't have the most open hips, so my back is going to want to round. You see that little bit of rounding happening? So when we have that extra height under the hips, that's going to help to lengthen up through the spine. So if you do have a blanket, a towel nearby, your block, go ahead and use that as some support. All right, and so then as we come into this seat, another good cueing to remember is that we want to keep the shoulders directly over the hips. So if we feel that the shoulders are moving forward a little bit or back a little bit, we just start to realign so we find that architecture of the shoulders right over the hip bones. And the good way to also sense whether or not we're a little off balance here is what's happening in our sits bones. So those 2 points right underneath the glutes that you can feel into. And I encourage you guys to actually touch them right now. I know it's kind of weird, but just make sure you have that awareness of what they are. And you can shift back and forth. So if we feel that we're tilting too far forward on our sits bones or too far back on the sits bones, we want to ideally find that nice center of balance so that they're equally rooted and they're equally grounded. So this is our seat. Also in the seat, we just want to find a nice softening through the elbows. And then as we soften through the elbows, another cue is to make sure the shoulders are also drawing away from the ears. So if we feel the shoulders at any point hiking up towards the ears, we're just softening them down in a way. And that also will help to open up a little more through the front of the chest. Another important thing to note is what's happening in the head. So at the base of the chin, if we feel that the chin is looking up or it's looking down, we want to imagine that the base of the chin is level just with the earth. So we're just going to settle into this first seat. And I know that was a lot of technicality that I just threw at you. So just take what you can. Just take what is resonating, what you can absorb right now. And we're just going to allow ourselves to settle in and just begin to watch the natural flow of your breathing. So we can build that relationship with the breath more consciously by noticing where the breath starts, where we might sense the middle of the breath, the full height of the breath. And then similarly on that out breath, we notice the same things where the breath starts to release, the middle of that release, and the full empty down towards the belly. So just in these opening few moments, just watching that natural flow of breath as it moves in and out. And if you feel that the mind is really buzzy, so I love this cue because as we know, the mind can get very chatty, especially in times like this that are really challenging. We just internally repeat to ourselves, inhale, I'm breathing in, and exhale, I'm breathing out. And as you're breathing, just starting to become more acclimated to that sensation of the breath. So what does it feel like when the breath expands on the inhale? And also, what does it feel like in the breath on the exhale? So we might start to notice parts of the front of the ribs, the side of the ribs, the backs of the ribs as we inhale. And then on the release, similarly, we might start to notice those areas start to release. Okay, and so we're going to just breathe together through some intentional counts of breath. So generally speaking, when we're trying to calm the nervous system, when we're trying to find that equilibrium in the breath, either 3 counts of breath in to 5, or 3 counts of breath out, or 5. So we're going to start, this is going to build, we're going to begin with 3 counts of breath in, and then we'll advance to 5 counts of breath in. So allowing the breath to move down to the base of the belly and actually push the belly out so you feel that nice reset. And then we're going to inhale to breathe in through the nose, sipping breath in for 1, 2, and 3. Pausing the breath, and then we'll slowly begin to release out through the nose for 1, 2, pause 3. Inhale, sipping breath in through the nose for 1, 2, pause 3. Top of the breath, slow through the nose for 1, 2, and 3. Again, in through the nose for 1. Middle of the breath, full height of the breath. So really feel it at the collarbone. And then releasing out through the nose for 1, 2, and 3. Now we'll try 3 counts of breath, 5 in. So inhale through the nose for 1, 2, still at the middle, 3, chest 4, collecting at the collarbone 5. And then slow out through the nose. Feel it release through the collarbone, chest, middle of the torso, 4, and 5. Good. So inhale through the nose, 1, 2, sipping in 3, 4, collect 5, and then slow out through the nose for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We'll do one more like this. Sipping breath, 1, 2, 3, fill it, fill, 4, and 5, hold. Top of the breath, slow through the nose, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Good. Let's cleanse that out. So inhale, taking a full breath in. And then exhale, let's take an open mouth. Inhale, lengthening even taller through the spine. Exhale as you release, dropping the shoulders, release. We'll do one more like that. Inhale. And exhale. Good. All right. So today we're going to interlace the fingers and we're just going to roll through the wrists. And so we're just feeling that sensation through the wrists. Okay, and so we're going to start to press the right palm forward. I'm going to face this side for a moment so you can see. And we're going to take the left fingers, they're going to come to the tips of the right fingers, and then we're pulling the right fingers towards us. So as much as you can, watch what's happening in that right shoulder. See how mine's kind of going forward? We want to pull it back and down. And then making sure that the wrist is as much in line with the shoulder as you can here. So I know we're in this very interesting period and we're finding the new norm at our computers all of the time, or at least to me it seems that way. And it's a really good reminder to work out the wrists and come back to stretching out certain areas in this region of the body. All right, and then we're gonna point the fingers down now. So same thing, but this time we're gonna take the left fingers to the tops of the right fingers, and then we're pulling the right fingertips towards your body. So same thing, watch what's happening in that right shoulder, drawing it back and down. And then as you're breathing, so a very key part in yoga is that we're using the exhale as a way to maybe deepen into our stretch, whatever it is, or we're using the exhale in a way to release. So if we feel that we're holding, we're gripping in any one area, can you use that exhale to wash away any of that holding tension? All right, so let's start to switch it up. Before we do, just a couple of wrist rolls in that right. I'm gonna face this way for the other side. Okay, so we're making that kind of stop palm in the left hand. We're taking the right fingertips to draw the left fingertips towards the body. Checking in with that left shoulder, drawing it back and down. And as much as you can, trying to keep the shoulder in that long line with the wrists. Starting to use that awareness of the exhale. So again, exhale. Can you maybe deepen by pulling the fingertips closer to you, or maybe simply, can you release somewhere? Even if it's in the face, sometimes we're, unconsciously holding tension in the face where it doesn't need to be working there. All right, we're gonna start to reverse. So then the fingertips are gonna point down. We're gonna take that right hand. We're gonna draw the fingertips towards us. And so hopefully we're feeling a nice stretch here. If we're not, again, those alignment cues are gonna really help us. So if you feel that left shoulder peeking forward, just start to draw it back a little bit more. All right, we'll take one more breath here. Wonderful. Now let's start to wash that out. A couple of wrist rolls in the left. All right, so today I don't want us to be seated for too long, so we're gonna actually come off of whatever props that we were on. So let's take those over to the side. We're gonna come into a tabletop. So coming to a tabletop, we wanna make sure that the shoulders are directly in line over the wrists and that the hips are directly aligned over the knees. So I'm a very good example of this. I do have hyperextended elbows, so I have to be really careful of not locking. So I need to find a gentle bend in my elbows, and sometimes it's hard to do. So get in that habit right away, just because that's also going to keep you safe in your practice, supported. So then as you're feeling evenly grounded through both hands, watch what's happening in the shoulders. So I'm gonna face you guys for a minute here. So if we feel that the shoulders are kind of creeping in and forward, we're trying to broaden through that space. Also, another thing to note here, what's happening in the head. So if we feel that we're kind of allowing the throat to reach forward a little too much, ideally what we want is the crown of the head reaching towards the front of the room. So we're gonna move through what's called cat and cow. So if you're new to this, feel free to just watch me, and then I'll use my verbal cues as best as I can to support you through this motion. So this is where we start to use our breath with our movements. So on the inhale, generally what happens is that's when the pose is lengthening, that's when something's happening in transition and your sequencing, and then the exhale is generally where we're contracting. So if we think about it, the inhale is lengthening and then the exhale is contracting. So as you come into this tabletop, we're gonna inhale, we're gonna arch the spine, broadening through the shoulders, and then you can here start to lift the head up. And then on the exhale, we're starting to pull the navel in towards the spine, rounding, and then the chin is coming towards the chest. So let's try that again. Inhale, broadening through the shoulders, opening through the heart. And then on the exhale, we're pulling the navel in, rounding like a Halloween cat, and then the chin is coming closer towards the chest. We'll do another inhale, and exhale, contract. And again, inhale, and exhale, contract. Okay, now we're gonna pause here for a moment. So pause in the arch, this is our cow pose, and just checking in here. Can you slightly bend in the elbows, broaden through the shoulders, And then we're gonna pause in the cat. So pulling the navel in. And then the shoulders are actually coming up a little closer to the ears here, if that cue helps you. And then we're really feeling that belly pulling in towards the spine. Good. All right, now let's come to a neutral spine. We want to feel this as well, because this is essentially a combination of cat and cow, if you think about it. So what's happening here is we're buttoning the ribs in, pulling the navel in. And as I mentioned before, the crown of the head is reaching towards the front of the room. We're trying to create this long line of energy down the spine, out through the tailbone. So just taking a couple of breaths to feel into that, feeling into that linear alignment. Okay. All right, so we're gonna start to tuck the balls of the toes, feel them press into the earth, and then we're really pressing into the mat as we start to lift the knees. So I'm gonna take us through getting into downward facing dog really slow today. At any point, feel free to modify it in any way that you need. So we're gonna lift the knees off of the mat just about 2 inches. So hopefully we're feeling our abdominals firing up. Now from here, start to just kick back a little bit in the hips. So this is gonna give you a little sensation of stretch in the calves. Now once we kick back slightly, now start to evolve by lifting the hips high. Now as you're lifting the hips high, if you feel the back rounding, that is going to be natural when you're first starting out. Find a deeper bend in the knees if you can. Now as you come to the place where you feel that the back is as lengthened as you can go, just start to slowly straighten the legs. And you might need to adjust your stance, so bringing the hands forward if you need. So ideally what's happening here, I'm just going to talk through a few cues. We're feeling that, and I'm going to try to demonstrate the wrong way and then the right way. So the wrong way, if we feel that the shoulders are coming into the ears, try to draw them away just a little bit more. And then the hands, if you have pretty tight shoulders, just one thing I definitely want to note, you don't always have to keep the fingers facing forward. They can actually face out. So that's going to really help the shoulders when we're first starting out. And then also with hand placement, so we're gonna wanna feel a little more pressure on the thumb and then the index finger. So as you're coming into that, just a little more pressure on the thumb and the index finger. All right, now we're gonna start to move up and where we're finding alignment here. So watch what's happening with the ribs. So a lot of times what can happen is the ribs are really flailing out, but we have to button them in just enough to pull the abdominals in. So if you feel that there's like a lot of release happening in the ribs, just try to button that in a little bit. And when I say button that in, it's almost like you can imagine, it's an analogy of a corset, right? It's trying to bring the ribs in together and then pull the navel in towards the spine. And then coming into the hip space. So what can happen here if we're rounding in the spine, you see how my tailbone is looking out rather than up? To correct that, we want to feel the tailbone lifting up towards the sky. So this is going to find that long length in the back. This is also going to help to relieve any low back tension, by the way. And then also, this is where if we sense that we're still rounding, just find that deeper bend in the knees. So the heels never need to touch the mat if they're not there. So what we really want to feel in this pose is the length through the spine, tailbone lifting up, shoulders drawing back and away. All right.